Why Mandelbrot, Chapter 4, The Monsters. If you haven't got Chapter 1 yet, The Secret Sauce, or Chapter 2, The Complex Variables, or Chapter 3, The Algorithm, you're going to want to listen to those videos as well. They can be all found on fractallog.com. Today we're going to be talking about 5 different types of monsters. These are fractal constructs that do not fit in our mathematics. And in the case of the natural occurring fractals, Mother Nature provides a never-ending supply of those, but we don't know how to deal with them. And Mandelbrot provided a beautiful exposition of Mandelbrot fractals via his recursive equation, and we cannot really discuss the undisclosed fractals that exist in corners of the universe that we haven't even seen yet. We can talk about the artificial fractals that mathematicians have constructed throughout the years but still don't know how to measure them. We can also talk about the quirky fractals, those fractals that are constructed for the sake of art. Nature provides an abundant amount of fractals from clouds to human nervous systems, to mountains, to lightning, to stem cells, to bean sprouts. Never-ending supply. Mandelbrot provides the pixels. We don't know what the fractals look like, but his recursive equation gives us the pixel placement and the color of each of those pixels. And when we assemble them all in one picture, we have created an intricate, beautiful fractal arrangement. Can't really say much about the undisclosed fractals of the universe that have never been observed by humans before. We can talk about the artificial fractals using triangles on triangles and taking third of lines successively over and over again until you have created an artificial construct that fits the bill of a monster, meaning you cannot measure it. And we can also talk about the quirky fractals. An example of the quirky fractals are Mandelbrot website that uses polar coordinates to perturbate shapes to come out with pretty pictures. Examples of Mother Nature's work: lightning, trees, forests, root systems, coastlines that cannot be measured. Mandelbrot's providing the inside of the Mandelbrot baby at a variety of focus levels, all being directed pixel by pixel, color by color, by his recursive equation. The artificial monsters have been around for hundreds of years, invented by mathematicians, but unable to measure their products. The quirky fractals are manufactured by polar coordinates and other common standard real number system math functions that create artful fractal pictures. You can't measure natural fractals. You might be able to simulate some of them, like building up mountain ranges using triangles. You can't really create a natural fractal or monster because we don't know the math. We don't know the decision processes that Mother Nature puts into her veins and roots and tributaries. We just don't understand the mechanisms, the protocols, and perhaps we don't even have the capacity to understand how Mother Nature does what she does. We can document certain patterns and probabilities, but those only result in some understandings of those processes. As far as Mandelbrot's concerned, we can't measure those fractals either. We can't really even simulate those. We can create his fractals, however, using his recursive formula. But his recursive formula depends upon the complex number system. And without the complex number system, there is no Mandelbrot babies. We can document some of the patterns within the Mandelbrot fractal system. We can notice that certain locations have certain characteristics and certain numbers of nodes and those kinds of things, but those are simply insights into a very complicated fractal process. Can't say much about the undisclosed fractal process, but they exist nonetheless. Artificial, can't be measured. They certainly can be simulated using artificial fractal techniques, created via plane geometry, well-known mathematics. And it can be documented, the many iterations of common, well-understood shapes that yield sophisticated artificial monster constructs. The quirky fractals cannot be measured as well, but they can be simulated because we know the math functions used to acquire them. They can be created, again, because the miscellaneous functions that are used are commonplace. They can be documented, they can be predicted using standard math processes that yield explainable quirky fractal processes. Summary: we have 5 different types of monsters: the natural, directed, undisclosed, artificial, and quirky. Notice column number 1 here, that this is the mark of a monster. You cannot measure a monster. You can simulate some of them, and you can create some of them. You can even document some of them. But when it comes to the number system, when it comes to the protocols and the decision processes used in the creation of the fractals themselves, sometimes we don't have a clue. We do have an understanding of the real number system with regard to artificial and quirky fractals. We have not a clue on the undisclosed, obviously. And we do understand the complex number system used by Mandelbrot, although we still do not understand the decision processes used within the fractals that causes them to branch and not to branch. The same goes for the natural fractals. We don't know how they work. We can't mock them. We can't construct a bean sprout. We can't construct a nerve cell. We can't construct much of anything because we don't know how it works. And that's one of the reasons we need to talk about this subject today. To quote Mandelbrot from his book, The Fractal Geometry of Nature, 1983, why is geometry often described as cold and dry? One reason lies in its inability to describe the shape of a cloud, a mountain, a coastline, or a tree. Clouds are not spheres, mountains are not cones, coastlines are not circles, and bark is not smooth, nor does lightning travel in a straight line. Clouds are not spheres. We study spheres We know everything there is to know about spheres in our mathematics study, but we know nothing about clouds. Mountains are not cones. We know cones. We very well know cones. Depending upon the slice of the cone, you get different shapes and sizes of geometric figures. We know everything there is to know about cones, but not much about mountains. Coastlines, they're not circles. We know circles. We study circles. We know everything there is to know about circles. Circumference and area, radius. A lot of things we know about circles. Coastlines, not so much. Bark is not smooth, but man-made products are very smooth. They're also very irregular, very man-made, not found in nature. Nature is more chaotic at what appears to our eyes, as opposed to this construct that looks very ordered and very arranged. That's because we think this way. We don't think the way nature thinks. Lightning does not travel in a straight line, we know that, but we always travel in a straight line. If it's man-made, it's straight. If it's straight, it's not man-made. Why is that? Well, because we have been trained. We're good students of our geometry. We don't learn about monsters too much, but we know all about squares and rectangles and triangles and spheres and cones and all kinds of things and all the rules that go along with them. We're very good at that. We understand our established geometry. We think that way. And we build that way. We put squares and circles and triangles and very man-made looking constructs throughout everything we produce in the Industrial Revolution. And we still do it. We smooth it out a little bit, but we still have circles and squares a little bit more streamlined. Well, triangles a little bit less like triangles, but we still stay with our tradition. Why? Because that's how we think. We don't think like nature. Mandelbrot came along. My goodness. There was a revolution. Why was that revolution? We discovered mathematical constructs that didn't fit any of the patterns of Euclid and Newton. We grew up on Euclid, with the exception of Einstein, of course. Those of us in the recent history have learned a little bit about Einstein's geometry, which is a space-time continuum. A little bit different than Euclid's, but we're not in outer space now. We're not worried about space-time continuums. We're more worried about triangles, squares, and circles. That's our world, Euclid. Newton's law of motion. When things move a certain way, we capture the forces involved, and we make mathematical equations about them, and we're quite good at that. But then along came Mandelbrot. Certainly monsters were there before Mandelbrot, but it was Mandelbrot that shined a light on them and really created a revolution. These new structures were regarded as a gallery of monsters, akin to the Cubist painting and atonal music that upset the established standards of taste in the arts at about the same time that monsters were coming onto the scene. Mandelbrot refers to a Latin saying that says, to name is to know. He wanted to make sure that we knew the monsters monsters that have been around for hundreds of years. In fact, in terms of nature, been thousands and millions of years. But at the same time, monsters were coming to the forefront and highlighted with Mandelbrot's baby. The name, he went to his publisher with no name on his book. The publisher said, you must name what you're talking about. You must name it. And he looked at various definitions and found one about breaking something apart in order to reveal its irregular, self-similar shape. So in 1975, he told his publisher, I want to call them fractals. We are pretty good in mathematics. We have calculus of motion, quantitative and deterministic analysis of force, mass, and acceleration, etc. We know about electromagnetism and Brownian motion, the trajectory of rockets and galactic forces, and even to the quantum level of quarks and muons. We have the math. We know how to deal with motion. But what is missing here? How about the calculus of growth? Quantitative and deterministic analysis of universal growth of natural entities, no matter where this pattern of life exists in the universe. I'm not talking about simulation. I'm not talking about probability models. I'm talking about the actual creation of math protocols and processes that can replicate natural growth. Veins, rivers, clouds, and the human nervous system. But where to start? Calculus of directed fractals. What about Mandelbrot's world? Understanding the protocol of the fractal decision process. Quantitative and deterministic analysis of fractal heuristics and self-similar strategies inherent in Mandelbrot's environment. Then on to other dimensions in Mandelbrot's world, like in Chapter 5 we'll talk about. Be sure to conquer the monsters. We must conquer the monsters. But where to start? Why does this particular branch turn into 10 arms? Why is a baby Mandelbrot out in this direction over here? And what creates the various patterns that support that baby over here? What causes this branch to turn into a spiral? What are the decision processes that occur throughout this one small little picture, one little area of a Mandelbrot baby? We don't have the foggiest idea. We can simply look at them and say that, wow, are they pretty? But we need to go a step further. We need to become smarter on the mathematics and the protocols involved in fractals. How about a simple nerve cell? Can we make a nerve cell? Can we program nanobots to go out into a solution and construct a nerve cell? Can we make other nerve cells to connect to this nerve cell? We can't do that. We're not smart enough. We need to know how Mother Nature does it. What is her decision process? How does she know what to do? How does she know where the various tentacles need to be placed and how to connect them together? What's that protocol? What's that mathematics? That's what we're asking today. Where to start? How about artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence, or AI, is still in elementary school. You can do some searches and it can do some communications. It can even act like a robot and do menial tasks. But it doesn't even scratch the surface of potential of what AI could be destined to accomplish in our future. But where to start? How about wiring up an AI agent to learn about the monsters, to learn about their decision trees, their tendencies, and their motivations, unquote. Then assign an investigative AI agent that would be able to create new and different creations, root systems, when commanded to do so. How about that? How about learning? A learning agent that monitors growth millions of times over, millions of different bean growths and different root systems, different soil samples, different moisture content, different oxygen content, different pressures and humidity and temperatures, recording all this billions of information as an AI learning agent for bean sprouts. You think maybe that AI agent could communicate to some AI growth agent to construct some nanobots to go out into solution and construct something that would be very similar? Sounds reasonable. A little above our heads right now, maybe. That's what you're here for. You're here to help. How about an artificial intelligence? Learning agents require vast amounts of in-depth, real-time, hard-to-get information. They would need visual and chemical sensors. They need to develop those to provide the data to the agents, along with spatial positioning tools and various movable calipers and clamps, etc. All the things that an AI agent would need in order to accumulate and to collect and to process billions and billions of pieces of information on a specific topic. Each specialized AI agent not only needs to acquire big data, but the collective library must be able to collaborate among the various tranches. An earnest move in this direction may position us closer to understanding the natural and directed fractals of our world. Someday, we may be able to measure the monsters. We know we can't measure them now, but perhaps this is an area that AI could step in and help us out with. It's possible. It's possible. This has been The Monsters. Chapter 5 is about the dimensions. And here's a sneak preview.